Jake Miller wiped the sweat from his forehead as he maneuvered his aging cargo hauler into Bay 7 of the Frontier Trading Outpost. The landing wasn't smooth, it never was with this old bucket of bolts, but the struts held as the ship finally settled onto the platform. He let out a breath he didn't know he'd been holding. 3 weeks of non-stop hauling medical supplies across the outer sectors had worn him down to the bone, and the ship was making noises that kept him awake at night. The coolant system sounded like a dying animal, and the navigation computer had crashed twice in the last 2 days. He needed repairs, and he needed them now before attempting another jump through hyperspace. The airlock hissed open and Jake stepped out onto the station's main platform. The air hit him immediately, that recycled station smell mixed with fuel exhaust and cooking food from the marketplace. It wasn't pleasant, but after 3 weeks breathing his own ship's stale air, it felt like a vacation. He stretched his arms over his head, feeling his spine pop in 3 different places. Getting too old for these long hauls, he thought. Maybe it was time to find a partner, someone to share the routes with. He flagged down one of the station mechanics, a grumpy-looking guy with oil stains covering his jumpsuit. After a quick negotiation that cost Jake more credits than he wanted to spend, the mechanic agreed to look at the coolant system and run diagnostics on the NAV computer. 2 hours minimum, probably 3. Jake decided to grab something resembling coffee and stretch his legs in the marketplace while he waited. The trading outpost was busy today. Merchants from a dozen different species hawked their wares from colorful stalls. Traders argued over prices in half a dozen languages. Ships of every size and design came and went from the docking bays, their engines creating a constant low rumble that you felt more than heard. Jake bought something hot and bitter from a vendor who claimed it was coffee. It probably wasn't, but it was warm and had caffeine, and that was good enough. He wandered through the crowded marketplace, half paying attention to the goods on display. Spices from the inner worlds. Tech components from salvage operations. Medical supplies like the ones he hauled. Nothing he needed, but it was interesting to look. His leg muscles appreciated the movement after sitting in the pilot's chair for so many hours. That's when everything changed. Jake was passing by the edge of the main docking platform when movement caught his eye. Something small moving near the barrier. He turned his head and his heart jumped into his throat. A child. An alien child, but definitely a child. She couldn't have been more than 3 or 4 years old in human terms, with silver-gray skin that seemed to shimmer slightly in the station lights. The distinctive ridge markings running along her forehead and down her neck marked her as Creathian, one of the warrior species that most people in the galaxy gave a very wide berth. But right now she was just a toddler and she was wandering toward danger. The plasma vents. Jake's eyes went wide. The kid was heading straight for the thermal exhaust vents that glowed orange with superheated plasma. These vents were standard on every station, necessary to dump excess heat from the reactors, but they were dangerous as hell. Every few minutes they discharged, sending jets of plasma hot enough to melt steel into the space beyond the platform. There were safety rails, but they were designed for adults, not small children who could easily slip through the gaps. Jake's coffee cup hit the ground. Where were her parents? Where was anyone watching her? The child reached out one small hand toward the pretty orange lights. She was fascinated by them, drawn to the warm glow like any curious kid would be. She had no idea that those lights could kill her in seconds. Jake could see the vent beginning to cycle up, the orange glow intensifying. Maybe 30 seconds before it discharged. His feet were moving before his brain fully processed what was happening. Years of emergency drills on various stations kicked in. His heart pounded as he ran, dodging between startled traders and pushing past a group of merchants. 20 seconds. The child was leaning forward now, reaching through the gap in the safety rail. 15 seconds. Jake's boots hammered against the metal platform. His lungs burned. Too far. He was too far away. 10 seconds. Jake pushed harder, his legs pumping. A cargo loader beeped angrily as he vaulted over its path. 5 seconds. The vent's glow became blinding. The child's fingers were inches from the opening. Jake dove forward, his arms outstretched. 3 seconds. His hands closed around the small body just as the vent began its discharge sequence. He twisted in midair, pulling the child against his chest and turning his back toward the vent. The world became fire and pain. Superheated plasma erupted from the vent in a massive jet. Jake felt it hit his back like a physical wall. His jacket ignited. His skin seared. The pain was beyond anything he'd ever experienced, beyond what his brain could fully process. It was like being pressed against a star. He screamed, but the sound was lost in the roar of the discharge. He fell forward, still clutching the child. His legs gave out and he hit the platform hard, rolling away from the vent. The child was crying loud wailing sobs, but she was alive. Not burned. Not hurt. His body had shielded her completely. Jake's vision began to blur at the edges. The pain was fading now, replaced by a cold numbness that scared him more than the burning had. That wasn't good. That meant shock, serious injury. Voices surrounded him suddenly. People shouting. Someone screaming for a medic. Jake tried to focus but couldn't. The child was pulled gently from his arms. He wanted to protest to make sure she was really okay, but his mouth wouldn't work properly. His eyes found her for just a moment. She was staring at him with huge eyes, tears streaming down her small face, but she was whole. Undamaged. Safe. Worth it, Jake thought. A face appeared above him. Another Creathian, an adult this time, looking down at him with an expression of absolute horror. The caretaker maybe, or a parent. Jake tried to say something, tried to tell them the kid was fine, don't worry, but the words came out as nonsense. His vision was narrowing now, darkness creeping in from the sides like a tunnel closing. The pain came back all at once, a wave that made him gasp. Then just as quickly it was gone again. Everything was gone. The sounds of the station faded. The lights dimmed. Jake's last conscious thought was hoping they'd finish fixing his ship while he was in the medical bay. He had a delivery deadline to meet. Then the darkness took him completely and he knew nothing more. Jake's mind surfaced slowly from the darkness, like swimming up from the bottom of a deep pool. Everything felt distant and muffled. He became aware of sounds first, the steady beep of medical equipment, the hum of life support systems, voices speaking in low tones somewhere nearby. Then came sensation, the softness of a bed beneath him, the weight of blankets and pain. Dull, distant pain that felt like it was being held at bay by something strong. Medication probably. His eyelids felt like they weighed 1,000 pounds, but he forced them open. White ceiling panels came into focus, the kind you saw in every medical facility across the galaxy. Soft lighting that didn't hurt his eyes. The air smelled sterile and clean with that particular chemical scent that all hospitals seem to share. He tried to move and immediately regretted it. Every muscle in his body protested, and the pain in his back flared hot despite whatever drugs they had him on. A chair scraped against the floor beside his bed. Jake turned his head slowly, carefully, and found himself looking up at something that would have terrified most humans. A Creathian warrior stood beside his bed, and he was massive. Easily 7 feet tall, with broad shoulders that seemed to fill half the room. His skin was the color of weathered stone, marked with scars that told stories of countless battles. He wore dark combat armor that looked both ancient and incredibly advanced, and his yellow eyes watched Jake with an intensity that made him want to look away. But Jake was too tired and too sore to be properly afraid. He just stared back, trying to make his brain work through the medication fog. The warrior spoke first, his voice deep and rough like rocks grinding together. "You are awake. Good. I was beginning to wonder if you would sleep forever." Jake's throat was dry as sand. He swallowed painfully and managed to croak out, "Where am I?" "Station Medical Bay. You have been unconscious for 4 days." The warrior's expression didn't change, but something in his tone softened slightly. "The doctors say you are fortunate to be alive. The burns you sustained should have killed you." 4 days. Jake tried to process that. 4 days gone just like that. His ship. The delivery deadline. He must have missed it by now. The cargo company was going to kill him. Then another thought hit him, sharper and more urgent than worries about his job. "The kid," Jake said, his voice gaining strength. "The little girl. Is she okay?" For the first time, something changed in the warrior's face. His eyes widened slightly, and if Jake didn't know better, he would have sworn he saw surprise there. The Creathian leaned forward slightly. "That is your first question? After 4 days unconscious, with burns covering 30% of your body, you ask about the child?" "Yeah," Jake said simply. "Is she hurt? Did I get to her in time?" The warrior was silent for a long moment, studying Jake's face like he was trying to solve a puzzle. Then he straightened up and something that might have been respect flickered across his scarred features. "Young Mara is completely unharmed. Not a single scratch. You shielded her perfectly." The warrior paused. "I am called Torin. I have been assigned to stand guard over you while you recover." Relief flooded through Jake so powerfully that he felt tears prick at the corners of his eyes. She was okay. The kid was fine. That was all that mattered. He sagged back against the pillows, suddenly exhausted despite having just woken up. "Guard me?" Jake asked after a moment. "Why would I need a guard? I'm just a cargo hauler who got lucky." Torin's expression became unreadable again. "You do not understand what you have done. You do not understand who Mara is." A cold feeling settled in Jake's stomach. Who is she? Mara is the youngest daughter of High Commander Kale of the Stormborn clan. Torin let that sink in for a moment. The Stormborn are the most powerful warrior clan in all of Crethean space. They have held their position for 300 generations. Their word is law among our people. Their enemies do not survive long. Jake's mind raced. He'd saved the daughter of basically Crethean royalty. That was either very good or very bad, and he wasn't sure which yet. I didn't know, Jake said weakly. She was just a kid in danger. I would have done the same for anyone. Yes, Torin said, and now there was definitely something in his voice. Respect, maybe, or wonder. The doctors confirmed this. They say you did not hesitate. You did not pause even for a heartbeat. You saw the danger and you ran toward it, not away. You placed your body between Mara and death without thinking of yourself. Jake didn't know what to say to that. It had been instinct, pure reaction. What else could he have done? Just stood there and watched a kid die? Torin moved closer to the bed, and Jake noticed for the first time that the warrior was carrying something. A data pad. He activated it and turned it so Jake could see the screen. Your ship has been fully repaired, Torin said. New coolant system. New navigation computer. Upgraded power couplings. The hull has been reinforced and the life support system replaced. All weapons systems have been serviced. He paused. All medical expenses for your treatment have been covered. The most expensive regeneration treatments available. You will heal completely with no permanent damage or scarring. Jake stared at the pad, at the list of repairs and upgrades that must have cost 10 times what his entire ship was worth. I can't afford any of this. You are not being asked to pay. Torin deactivated the pad. By Crethean law you have created a life debt. You risked your life to save a member of the Stormborn clan. This creates a bond, one that cannot be broken or dismissed. The clan is honor-bound to repay you. I don't want payment, Jake said, and he meant it. I just did what anyone decent would do. Torin's expression changed again, became something almost sad. No, Jake Miller. That is where you are wrong. Most beings would not have done what you did. Do you know how most species view the Cretheans? Jake thought about it. He'd heard the stories, the rumors. They say you're dangerous. Warriors. That your people value strength above everything and see most other species as weak. Yes. We are feared across the galaxy. And do you know what most beings do when they see a Crethean child in danger? Torin's voice became hard. They calculate. They think about potential consequences. They worry about offending us if they touch our young. They fear retribution if something goes wrong. They consider political implications. And while they calculate and consider and worry, the child dies. Jake felt something cold settle in his chest. That's horrible. That is reality. Torin leaned against the wall and for the first time he looked tired. 3 years ago, a Crethean child fell into a reactor shaft on a trading station. 15 beings watched it happen. None moved to help. The child died. When we asked why no one helped, they all said the same thing. They were afraid of us. Afraid we would blame them if the rescue went wrong. Afraid we would see their help as an insult, as if we could not protect our own. Jake closed his eyes, imagining it. A kid falling, people watching, no one moving. Made him sick. You did not calculate, Torin continued. You did not consider consequences or politics or fear. You saw a child in danger and you moved. You did not even pause to think about the fact that she was Crethean. To you, she was just a child who needed help. He paused. That is rare, Jake Miller. Rarer than you can possibly understand. And that is why the life debt is so significant. Jake opened his eyes again. What does this life debt mean exactly? It means High Commander Kale herself has requested your presence on our homeworld. It means you will be honored before the entire Stormborn clan. It means your actions will not be forgotten. Torin's yellow eyes locked onto Jake's. It means whether you want it or not, whether you understand it or not, you have changed your relationship with the Crethean people forever. The room was quiet except for the beeping of the medical equipment. Jake's mind spun, trying to process everything. He'd just been trying to save a kid. He hadn't wanted honor or recognition or to change anything. He just reacted, done what felt right in the moment. What if I refuse? Jake asked quietly. What if I just want to get back to my ship and my routes and pretend this never happened? Torin's expression became grave. Then our honor demands we bring you anyway. The life debt must be acknowledged. It is Crethean law, older than your species' first cities. He paused. But I do not think you will refuse. You do not seem like someone who runs from the consequences of his actions, even when those consequences are uncomfortable. Jake stared at the ceiling for a long moment. His back still hurt. His whole body felt like it had been through a furnace. He'd missed his delivery deadline. His comfortable, predictable life as a cargo hauler was apparently over. And all because he'd done what any decent person should do. Finally he looked back at Torin. "When do we leave for your homeworld?" The warrior's scarred face showed what might have been approval. "As soon as the doctors clear you to travel. Perhaps 2 more days." Jake nodded slowly. "Okay. But Torin?" "Yes. Can someone please get me some real coffee?" Whatever that vendor sold me before all this happened definitely wasn't it. For the first time Torin's stern expression cracked. The corner of his mouth twitched upward in what might have been the beginning of a smile. "I will see what can be done." The journey to the Crethean homeworld took 3 days and Jake spent most of it nervous. His ship, now running better than it ever had in the 15 years he'd owned it, followed in the wake of 3 massive Crethean warships. Each one was easily 10 times the size of his cargo hauler, bristling with weapons that could probably vaporize a small moon. Torin traveled with him, a silent presence that somehow made the journey less lonely. When they finally dropped out of hyperspace, Jake's jaw literally fell open. The Crethean homeworld hung before them like something out of an ancient legend. It wasn't like the soft blue and green worlds humans preferred. This planet was red and purple and orange, with massive mountain ranges that looked like the bones of some ancient giant pushing through the surface. Storms the size of Earth's continents swirled across the southern hemisphere. Everything about it screamed strength and endurance. As they descended through the atmosphere, Jake got his first real look at Crethean cities. They weren't built on the land, they were carved from it. Massive fortresses rose from the mountains themselves, as if the rock had been shaped by pure will into towers and walls and bridges that spanned impossible distances. No soft edges, no gentle curves. Everything was angles and strength, built to last forever. They landed at what Torin called the heart of the Stormborn, the clan's ancestral home. Jake stepped off his ship onto a landing platform made of dark stone that had been polished smooth by countless feet over countless generations. The air was thinner here than he was used to, and he was grateful for the small respirator the doctors had given him. His burns were mostly healed now thanks to the regeneration treatments, but his back still ached if he moved wrong. The great hall was beyond anything Jake had imagined. The ceiling soared 100 feet above his head, supported by pillars carved with scenes of battles and victories going back thousands of years. Banners hung from the rafters, each one representing a different family line within the clan. And filling every available space were Crethean warriors. Hundreds of them. Maybe thousands. All of them turned to watch as Jake walked down the central aisle, and the weight of their attention made his legs feel weak. At the far end of the hall, on a raised platform of black stone, sat High Commander Kale. Jake had seen images of her during the journey, but nothing had prepared him for the reality. She was bigger than Torin, taller and broader, with muscles that looked like they'd been carved from granite. Her skin was marked with scars that formed intricate patterns, the record of every battle she'd survived. Silver war braids hung past her shoulders, woven with small bones and metal rings that clicked softly when she moved. Her armor was ancient, polished to a mirror shine, marked with symbols Jake didn't recognize. This was a being who had fought and won more battles than Jake had years on his life. Beside her stood a small figure that made Jake's heart squeeze. Mara. The little girl he'd saved. She wore a simple robe and stood perfectly still, but her eyes were locked on Jake with an intensity that reminded him she was Crethean, even at her young age. Jake walked forward, very aware that his worn cargo hauler's jacket and patched pants looked ridiculous in this place of warriors and ancient honor. His boots echoed on the stone floor. Every eye in the hall followed his progress. He stopped at the base of the platform, unsure of what to do. Should he bow? Kneel? He settled for standing straight and trying not to look as terrified as he felt. Kale's voice boomed through the hall, deep and commanding. Jake Miller of Earth. You stand before the Stormborn clan. Jake swallowed hard. His mouth was dry despite the water he'd drunk before entering. Yes, Commander. I'm honored to be here. A murmur rippled through the assembled warriors. Kale raised one hand and instant silence fell. The power she commanded was absolute. You saved my daughter's life, Kale said, and her voice was different now. Still strong but with an undercurrent Jake couldn't quite identify. You placed your body between her and death. You asked for nothing. You expected nothing. Tell me why. This was it. The moment Torin had warned him about. Jake had practiced what he might say during the journey, but now all those careful words fled his mind. He had to go with the truth, simple and plain. She was in danger, Jake said, and his voice carried in the silent hall better than he expected. She could have died. I couldn't just stand there and watch that happen. He paused, then added, I know who she is now, but at the time I didn't. She was just a little kid who needed help. That's all that mattered. The murmur that went through the hall was louder this time. Kale stood slowly and Jake had to fight the urge to step back. She was even more imposing standing up. She descended from the platform, each footstep deliberate and measured. The crowd parted for her like water, and she circled Jake once, studying him from every angle. He felt like prey being assessed by a predator, and he had to consciously keep his breathing steady. You claim you want nothing, Kale said, stopping in front of him. No reward? No trade agreements? No technology or weapons or political favor? No, Commander. I just want to go back to my ship and my routes. Jake met her eyes, which took more courage than he'd known he had. I don't want to be honored or celebrated. I just did what felt right. Kale stared at him for a long moment. Then something changed in her expression. The warrior's mask slipped slightly, and Jake saw something he hadn't expected. Emotion. Real, deep emotion that she was keeping tightly controlled. For 300 generations, Kale said, and her voice carried to every corner of the hall, the Stormborn clan has held to our code. Strength in battle. Honor in victory. Protection of those who cannot protect themselves. These are the principles that define us. These are the values we teach our children from the moment they can understand words. She placed one massive hand on Jake's shoulder. He winced slightly, his back still sensitive, and she immediately adjusted her grip to be gentler. You, Jake Miller, are not Creathian. You were not raised with our code. You do not know our ways or our history. You are from a species many of us have dismissed as weak, as too soft to survive in a hard galaxy. Kale's voice grew stronger. And yet you embodied our highest virtue without ever being taught it. You protected the defenseless without thought of reward or consequence. You faced death to save a child who was not your own, not your species, not your responsibility in any way. The hall was so quiet Jake could hear his own heartbeat. Kale turned to face her warriors, her hand still on Jake's shoulder. This human has shown us something we had forgotten. True honor is not about strength of body. It is not about winning battles or conquering enemies. True honor is about choosing to do what is right when it would be easier to do nothing. True honor is about valuing life over safety. True honor is about action without calculation. She turned back to Jake and he saw tears in her eyes. Actual tears, though she didn't let them fall. By the ancient rites, by the old ways that guided our ancestors before we reached the stars, I declare the Valkyra. Her voice rang like a bell. An eternal bond between the Stormborn clan and Jake Miller. From this day forward we are connected. Your enemies become our enemies. Your struggles become our struggles. Our strength becomes your strength. Our honor is tied to yours until the stars burn cold and the universe goes dark. The sound that erupted from the assembled warriors was like thunder. Hundreds of fists slammed against armored chests in unison, the traditional sign of agreement and respect. The noise was overwhelming, shaking dust from the ancient rafters. Torrin stepped forward from the crowd, carrying a small box made of dark metal. He opened it to reveal a silver bracelet, inscribed with symbols so intricate Jake couldn't follow their patterns. Kale lifted the bracelet reverently. This cannot be removed except by death, she said, fastening it around Jake's wrist. It adjusted automatically to fit him perfectly, the metal warm against his skin. It marks you as Valkyra. Every Creathian who sees this will know you are bonded to the Stormborn. They will know you carry our protection and our honor. Jake stared at the bracelet. It was beautiful in a harsh way, all sharp edges and strong lines. The weight of it felt significant, permanent. This was real. This was happening. He'd come here thinking he'd receive some kind of thank you and maybe a medal he could put in a drawer. Instead, he'd been bound to an entire civilization. I don't know what to say, Jake admitted, his voice rough with emotion he hadn't expected to feel. Say you accept the bond, Kale said quietly, just for him. Say you will honor it as we will honor it. Jake looked past her at little Mara. The child was watching him with those huge eyes and she was smiling now. A real smile full of joy and trust. He thought about what could have happened on that station. He thought about a universe where he'd been 5 seconds slower, where he'd hesitated, where that child had died. The thought made him sick. He looked back at Kale and nodded. I accept. I'll honor the bond. Kale's stern face broke into a genuine smile, the first he'd seen from her. Then welcome, Jake Miller. She raised her voice again for the hall. Welcome to the Stormborn. You are one of us now. The thunder of fists on armor shook the hall again. Mara broke free from her position and ran down the platform steps. Before Jake could react, she'd wrapped her small arms around his legs in a fierce hug. He looked down at her, at this child who'd almost died, who was now safe and happy and alive. Jake knelt down carefully, his back protesting, and Mara immediately hugged him properly. She whispered something in his ear in Creathian. He didn't understand the words, but he understood the meaning. "Thank you." "You're welcome, kid," Jake whispered back. As he stood up, still holding Mara's hand, and faced the sea of Creathian warriors who were now somehow his family, Jake realized his life had changed in ways he couldn't begin to understand yet. He'd woken up a week ago as a simple cargo hauler with no family and no ties. Now he was Stormborn. And there was no going back. Jake had exactly 6 hours of peace before everything went sideways. He'd been given quarters in the Stormborn fortress, a room carved from solid rock with a window that looked out over the Red Mountains. He was sitting on the edge of the bed, still trying to process everything that had happened, when Torin burst through the door without knocking. The warrior's face was grim, his jaw set in a way that made Jake's stomach drop. "We have a problem," Torin said. "A serious one." Jake stood up, his back still aching slightly. "What kind of problem?" "The Ironhide clan has issued a formal challenge. Against you." The words took a moment to register. "A challenge? What does that mean?" Torin moved to the window, his massive frame blocking most of the light. "It means they are calling you a liar and a manipulator. They claim you deliberately put Mara in danger so you could save her and gain favor with the Stormborn. They say the Velkera is a fraud." Jake felt anger flash through him, hot and sudden. "That's completely insane. I would never hurt a kid. Never. Not for any reason. I know that. Commander Kale knows that. Everyone who has spoken with you knows that." Torin turned back to face him, and his expression was troubled. "But the Ironhide clan has always been rivals to the Stormborn. They see this as an opportunity to diminish our honor. To make us look weak for bonding with an outsider." "So what happens now?" Jake asked, though part of him didn't want to know the answer. "Their champion, a warrior named Brandon Stone, demands to face you in the arena. Combat until one side submits or dies." Torin's voice was flat, stating facts. "If you refuse to fight, they will claim their accusations are true. That you are a coward who manipulated a child for political gain. The Stormborn's honor will be damaged. Other clans will question Kale's judgment." Jake sat back down on the bed, his legs suddenly weak. "I can't beat a Creathian warrior. I've seen you guys train. You're faster than me, stronger than me. I wouldn't last 30 seconds. "I know." Torin moved closer, and there was something in his eyes Jake hadn't seen before. "Worry. Real worry. By our laws, I can fight in your place. A champion defending a bonded member who cannot fight for themselves. Let me do this, Jake. I am one of the Stormborn's best warriors. I can defeat Brandon Stone." For a moment, Jake was tempted. Let someone who knew what they were doing handle it. Let Torin fight and win and make this problem go away. But then he thought it through, really thought about what that would mean. "If you fight for me and you lose, you die because of my choice," Jake said slowly. "And if you win, people will say I hid behind the Stormborn. That I'm exactly what they claim I am, a weak human using Creathians for protection. Either way, it hurts your clan's reputation." Torin's expression showed surprise. "You would rather die than damage our honor?" "I'd rather fight my own battles." Jake stood up again, decision made. "When is this challenge supposed to happen?" "Tomorrow at midday. In the ancient arena at the heart of the city." Torin studied Jake's face. "You understand you will almost certainly die?" "Yeah, I get that." Jake's mouth was dry but his voice was steady. "But I won't let someone else die for me. And I won't let these Ironhide people claim I'm something I'm not. I saved Mara because she needed saving. That's the truth and I'll fight to prove it." Torin was quiet for a long moment. Then he placed one massive hand on Jake's shoulder, carefully, mindful of his healing injuries. "You honor us, Jake Miller. Truly honor us. I will stand with you in the arena, even if I cannot fight for you." The next day, Jake stood at the entrance to the ancient arena, and his hands were shaking. He couldn't stop them no matter how hard he tried. The arena was carved from a natural bowl in the mountains, with stone seats rising in tiers around a flat fighting space. It looked like it had been here for thousands of years, worn smooth by time and use. Every seat was filled with Creathians from different clans, thousands of them, all here to watch a human probably get killed. Torin had given Jake light armor, the best they had that would fit his smaller frame. It wouldn't stop a direct hit from a Creathian warrior, but it might keep him alive a few seconds longer. He'd refused to carry a weapon. What was the point? He didn't know how to use Creathian weapons, and anything he could lift, Brandon Stone could probably rip from his hands. "Last chance to let me fight instead," Torin said beside him. "No," Jake said, though his voice shook slightly. "This is on me." A horn sounded, deep and resonant. Jake walked out into the arena, and the crowd's noise hit him like a physical wall. Some were cheering, but many were jeering, shouting insults in Creathian that he couldn't understand but whose meaning was clear enough. They thought he was a fraud. They thought he'd hurt a child for personal gain. They thought he was about to get exactly what he deserved. Across the arena, another entrance opened. Brandon Stone emerged and Jake's heart sank. The Ironhide champion was enormous, even by Creathian standards. He stood at least 8 feet tall, with dark gray skin covered in battle scars that formed patterns like armor. His muscles looked like they'd been carved from stone. In his hands he carried a war hammer that Jake probably couldn't lift with both hands and his legs. Brandon walked to the center of the arena, and his voice boomed out, amplified somehow so everyone could hear. "The human coward comes to face justice. You manipulated a child. You staged a rescue for political gain. You dishonor everything the Creathians stand for." Jake walked forward on shaking legs. The arena floor was hard-packed dirt, ancient and stained. He stopped about 20 feet from Brandon and forced himself to speak loud enough to be heard. "I didn't manipulate anyone. I saved a kid who was in danger. That's all. That's the truth." "Lies," Brandon spat. "You saw an opportunity and you took it. Now you hide behind Stormborn honor. But today I will expose you for what you are." The horn sounded again. The fight had begun. Brandon charged immediately, crossing the distance between them in 3 massive strides. Jake threw himself sideways, rolling in the dirt as the warhammer came down where he'd been standing. The impact cratered the ground, sending up a spray of dust and rocks. Jake scrambled to his feet, already breathing hard. The crowd roared. Brandon turned, lifting his hammer easily, and advanced again. Jake backpedaled, his mind racing. He couldn't outfight this warrior. He couldn't overpower him. He had to think. Had to find an advantage, any advantage. Brandon swung again, a horizontal strike that would have taken Jake's head off. Jake dropped flat, feeling the wind of the hammer's passage above him. He rolled again as Brandon's foot came down where his ribs had been. Rolled again. Kept moving. Stay alive. That was all he could do right now. The arena floor wasn't perfectly flat, Jake noticed. There were slight variations, places where the ground was more worn than others. Centuries of fighters had left their mark. And near the edges, where the arena met the stone walls, the ground looked different. Older. More weathered. Jake had a crazy idea. Probably a suicidal idea. But it was all he had. He started running toward the arena's edge where he'd noticed the older ground. Brandon followed, not running but walking with absolute confidence. Why rush? The human couldn't escape. Couldn't fight back. This was just a matter of time. "Stand and face me, coward." Brandon's voice echoed off the stone walls. Jake reached the edge of the arena, where the ground looked oldest and most worn. He turned, putting his back to the wall. Brandon grinned, showing teeth that looked like they could bite through steel. "Nowhere left to run, human." Brandon raised the warhammer high, putting his full weight and strength behind the strike. He brought it down with devastating force, aiming to crush Jake into paste. At the last possible second, Jake threw himself sideways along the wall. The hammer hit the ancient ground with tremendous force. And the ground, weakened by centuries of erosion and fights and weather, gave way. The old drainage channels that ran under the arena, designed to carry away blood and rainwater, had worn away the stone. Brandon's eyes went wide as the floor crumbled beneath his feet. The warhammer fell from his hands as he grabbed for the edge of the suddenly appearing pit. Jake didn't think. He lunged forward and grabbed Brandon's arm. His muscles screamed. His back, still healing, flared with pain. Brandon weighed at least 3 times what Jake did, and gravity was pulling him down hard. The arena went completely silent. Every eye was locked on the scene before them. The human, struggling with everything he had, holding the warrior who'd come to kill him. Brandon's other hand scrabbled at the edge of the pit, found purchase. Together, with Torin suddenly appearing to help, they pulled the Ironhide champion back onto solid ground. Brandon lay on his back, breathing hard, staring up at the purple sky. Jake collapsed beside him, his arms trembling, his whole body shaking with exhaustion and pain. For a long moment, neither moved. The crowd remained silent, stunned. Finally, Brandon sat up. He looked at Jake with an expression Jake couldn't quite read. "You could have let me fall. Saved yourself. Claimed victory." Jake pushed himself up on shaking arms. I didn't come here to kill you. I came here to prove I'm not what you said I am. Brandon stood slowly, towering over Jake even now. He turned to face the assembled clans, his voice carrying across the arena. I withdraw my challenge. The words rang out clear and strong. Jake Miller spoke truth. His actions in this arena prove his character. He saved his enemy without hesitation, just as he saved young Mara. This is honor in its purest form. The crowd erupted, not in jeers but in thunderous approval. Fists slammed against chests from thousands of warriors. The sound was like drums of war. High Commander Kale descended from her seat, Mara at her side as always. She looked at Jake, still on his knees in the dirt, trembling with exhaustion. Then at Brandon, covered in dust but alive. Then back to Jake. Today you have shown all Creathians what true honor means, Kale said. Rise, Jake Miller. You have earned more than just our clan's respect. You have earned the respect of all who witnessed this. Jake tried to stand and his legs buckled. Torin caught him, holding him steady. Easy, my friend. You did well. Better than well. As the crowd continued to cheer, Jake looked around at thousands of alien faces watching him with new eyes. He'd come here expecting to die. Instead, he'd somehow won without fighting, saved his enemy and proved his truth. All he'd wanted was to go back to hauling cargo in peace. That seemed less and less likely with each passing day. 3 months had passed since the arena, and Jake was back doing what he loved, hauling cargo across the frontier sectors. His route today took him through the Outer Rim, delivering construction supplies to a new mining colony. The work was honest, simple, and exactly what he needed after everything that had happened on the Creathian homeworld. He'd missed this, the quiet hum of his ship's engines, the peaceful solitude of deep space, the freedom of just being Jake Miller, cargo hauler, nobody special. Except he wasn't nobody anymore, and he definitely wasn't alone. Jake glanced at his scanner display and sighed. The Creathian warship Storm's Edge was right there, matching his course and speed exactly, like it had been for 3 solid months. He'd argued with Commander Kale about it before leaving. He'd pleaded, reasoned, even gotten a little angry. It didn't matter. The Velcara meant protection, and the Stormborn took their oaths seriously. Torin commanded the Storm's Edge now, and he'd made it very clear the escort wasn't optional. At least Torin was good company during the long jumps. They developed an easy friendship over the past months, talking about everything from ship maintenance to the differences between human and Creathian culture. Jake had even started learning some Creathian words, though his pronunciation made Torin wince. The silver bracelet on Jake's wrist caught the light from his control panel. He'd gotten used to the weight of it, the constant reminder of what he'd become part of. Other traders had definitely noticed it. Some gave him respectful nods and better deals. Others avoided him entirely, nervous about getting involved with someone who had Creathian connections. Jake understood both reactions. His communication console beeped, pulling him from his thoughts. An emergency broadcast, wideband, maximum priority. Jake's finger hit the receiver before he'd consciously decided to move. This is New Haven Colony broadcasting on all frequencies. We are under attack. Repeat, we are under attack. 3 Crimson Raider cruisers have entered our system. Our defense platforms are destroyed. Colony shields are failing. We have 50,000 civilians, mostly families. If anyone can hear this, we need help. Please, we need help now. Jake's blood ran cold. New Haven was a human settlement, barely 10 years old. He delivered supplies there twice before. Nice people trying to make a life on the frontier. Families. Kids. And the Crimson Raiders were the worst kind of pirates, the kind that didn't just steal cargo. They took people. Sold them. Killed anyone who resisted. His hands moved across the controls, plotting a jump to New Haven before his brain fully caught up with what he was doing. It was 3 hours away at maximum speed. His cargo hauler had no weapons, no shields worth mentioning. He couldn't fight 3 pirate cruisers. But he couldn't just listen to that message and do nothing. Jake Miller. Torin's voice came through the comm, sharp and commanding. I see you are changing course. That system is experiencing a combat situation. This is not wise. Those are human colonists, Jake said, his voice tight. Families, children. I can't just ignore this. Your ship is unarmed. You will die and you will save no one. I have to try. Jake's finger hovered over the jump initiation. You don't have to follow me. This isn't your fight. There was a pause. Then Torin's voice came back, and there was something in it that made Jake look up from his controls. You misunderstand the Velcara, my friend. When you move to protect your people, you honor the bond. And where you go, we follow. Jake's scanner suddenly lit up like a festival display. Ships dropping out of hyperspace all around him. The Storm's Edge, yes, but not alone. The Iron Will, Brandon Stone's vessel from the Ironhide clan. The Thunder Bearer. The War Song. The Knight's Fong. One after another, Creathian warships appeared, at least 15 of them, maybe more still jumping in. What is this? Jake whispered, staring at his display in disbelief. Commander Kale's voice came through, strong and clear. You move to protect your people, Jake Miller. This is the action of honor. The Velkara binds us to you and through you to those you would protect. Your people are now under our protection as well. But this isn't your fight, Jake said again, his voice rough with emotion he didn't expect. These are human colonists. You don't owe them anything. Brandon Stone's gravelly voice joined the channel. It became our fight when we swore the oath to you. Besides, pirates have no honor. They prey on the weak. They deserve only destruction. We are pleased to have legitimate cause to crush them. Jake couldn't find words. He'd spent 3 months trying to go back to normal, trying to pretend his life hadn't changed. And here was proof that everything was different now. These warriors, these entire clans, were willing to jump into combat to help people they'd never met, all because of a bond with one cargo hauler who'd saved a kid. Then let's go get them, Jake finally managed. The fleet jumped together, emerging in the New Haven system to chaos. The 3 pirate cruisers were in orbit around the colony world, their weapons hammering away at the failing shields. On Jake's display he could see the shield strength dropping by the second. 5%. 4. 3. Another few minutes and those ships would be able to land raiders on the surface. The Creathian fleet didn't bother with warnings or demands for surrender. They simply appeared behind the pirates and opened fire. The battle, if it could even be called that, was over in less than 5 minutes. 2 pirate ships were disabled so quickly their crews barely had time to react. The third tried to run, jumping to hyperspace, but the War Song was faster. It caught the pirate ship mid-jump, yanking it back to normal space with some kind of technology Jake had never seen before. That ship surrendered immediately when it realized it was surrounded. Jake brought his cargo hauler down to the colony's main landing pad, his hands still shaking slightly from the adrenaline. The colonists were emerging from their shelters, looking up at the sky where Creathian warships held position like guardian angels carved from metal and fury. They looked terrified and relieved and confused all at once. A woman approached Jake's ship as he lowered the ramp. She was in her 40s maybe, with gray streaking her dark hair and the worn look of someone who'd been through something traumatic. The colony administrator, according to the name tag on her jacket. Her name was Patricia Ward. You're Jake Miller, she said, and it wasn't quite a question. The one from the news feeds. The one who bonded with the Creathians. Jake felt his face heat up. He tried to avoid the media attention, but apparently he hadn't been successful. I just haul cargo, ma'am. I happened to be in the area when I heard your distress call. Patricia looked up at the warships overhead, then back at Jake. You brought the Creathians. To save us. Humans. Her voice cracked slightly. Do you understand what this means? They've never defended a human colony before. Never. Most people don't even think they care what happens to other species. They care about honor, Jake said quietly. And protecting people who can't protect themselves. That's their whole code. Over the next week, Jake watched something remarkable unfold. Representatives from human colonies across the sector came to New Haven. Not to see the colony, but to meet with the Creathian fleet commanders. Trade negotiations started. Defense pacts were discussed. Cultural exchange programs were proposed. Things that had been impossible before, doors that had been locked for generations, suddenly swinging open. Jake tried to stay out of it, to just repair his ship and get ready for his next cargo run. But people kept finding him, thanking him, asking questions, treating him like some kind of diplomat. He wasn't. He was just a guy who'd saved a kid and somehow changed the galaxy by accident. He was working on his ship's landing gear when Torin found him, Mara holding the warrior's hand. The little girl had insisted on coming along for this trip, and Kale had allowed it. Probably to remind Jake exactly what he'd saved, what this was all about. You are troubled, Torin observed, settling his massive frame on a cargo container that creaked under his weight. I'm just a cargo hauler, Jake said, not looking up from his work. I'm not a bridge between species. I'm not a symbol or a hero. I just didn't want a kid to get hurt. And that, Torin said, is precisely why you are the right person for this role you did not seek. You did not calculate political advantage. You did not consider trade benefits or military alliances. You saw a child in danger and you helped. That simple action, that pure moment of compassion, opened more doors than 1,000 diplomatic negotiations could have. Jake finally looked up, meeting Torin's steady gaze. It's a lot of responsibility. People are looking to me to be something I'm not. You do not carry this burden alone. Torin gestured at the warships overhead. The Stormborn stand with you. The Ironhide stand with you. 7 clans now, all because they saw what you truly are. Not a manipulator. Not someone seeking advantage. Just someone who does what is right because it is right. Mara tugged on Jake's pant leg. He looked down at her and she was holding something out to him. Another bracelet, but this one was different from the Velcara mark. It had small stones embedded in it, each one a different color. What's this? Jake asked, kneeling down to her level despite his back's protest. Each stone represents a clan, Kale's voice said from behind him. He turned to find the High Commander approaching, her armor gleaming in the colony's sun. 7 clans have sent these, asking that you know they extend friendship because of your actions. The Ironhide, the Thunder Clan, the Star Watchers, the Stone Guard, the Night Walkers, the Storm Riders, and of course the Stormborn. Jake took the bracelet carefully, feeling the weight of it. 7 clans. 7 groups of warriors who had decided he was worth knowing, worth respecting, all because he'd done what any decent person should do. There's something else, Kale said, and she actually looked uncomfortable, which was strange to see on someone so powerful. The Council of Clans has requested your presence at the next gathering. They wish to discuss formal alliance between Crethians and humans. They want you to speak for your people. I can't speak for humanity, Jake protested. I don't have that authority. I'm not a politician or a leader or anything like that. No, Kale agreed. You are something better. You are someone who acted with pure intent. Someone who saw past our fearsome reputation and saved one of ours without hesitation. Someone who fought for truth when it would have been easier to hide. Someone who saved an enemy without calculating the benefit. She paused. You are someone both humans and Crethians can trust, because you seek nothing for yourself. That is rarer than you know. Jake looked at the bracelet, at the 7 stones representing 7 warrior clans. He looked at Mara, smiling up at him with complete trust. He looked at Torin, who had become a true friend. He thought about the colonists here at New Haven, safe because Crethian ships had answered his call. He thought about all the people who might be safer in the future if humans and Crethians could actually work together. I'll go to your council, Jake said finally. I'll tell them what happened. I'll tell them the truth. But I'm not promising anything beyond that. Kale smiled, rare and genuine. The truth is all we ask. It is all we have ever asked. Mara hugged Jake's leg, then looked up at him with those huge eyes. Uncle Jake, she said in careful English. She'd been practicing. She held out something else, a small carved stone in the shape of a star. For you. So you remember. Jake took the stone, his throat tight. I could never forget, kiddo. Never. As his ship lifted off from New Haven 2 days later, the Storm's Edge taking its usual escort position, Jake looked at the 2 bracelets on his wrist and the small stone star he'd attached to his control panel. He'd set out 3 months ago just wanting to deliver medical supplies and pay his ship's maintenance bills. He'd ended up saving a kid, nearly dying, bonding with an alien warrior clan, surviving a challenge to the death, and apparently becoming some kind of accidental ambassador. His old life was gone. There was no going back to being just another anonymous cargo hauler. But as he looked at that little stone star, remembering Mara's smile and the trust in her eyes, he realized he didn't want to go back. What he'd found, this strange new life where his actions mattered and where doing the right thing had consequences that rippled across the galaxy, it was terrifying and overwhelming. But it was also good. It was right. And Jake Miller, simple cargo hauler from Earth, was going to see where this path led. Because apparently the galaxy needed people who would run toward danger to help a kid, who would fight for truth even when facing death, and who would save even their enemies without thinking twice. The galaxy needed heroes. And somehow, accidentally, without ever meaning to, Jake had become one. He just hoped he wouldn't mess it up too badly. The stars stretched out before him, full of possibilities he'd never imagined. And for the first time in a long time, Jake Miller was excited to see what came next.